Your paycheck hits your account, and somehow it buys less than it did 2 years ago. Groceries cost more, gas costs more, rent costs more, and your savings account, the one you worked hard to build, is quietly losing value every single day it just sits there. That's inflation. And most people either ignore it completely or panic and make emotional decisions with their money because of it. Today I'm going to show you 5 ways to actually protect your money from it, ranked from the easiest to the most powerful. And one of them is something almost nobody talks about, backed directly by the US government, that most people don't even know exists. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to have an actual plan instead of just a worry. I'm Sage, and this is Financial Methods, built on years spent as a licensed financial advisor and inside consumer lending, watching how the system really works. And that's exactly why this channel exists, to give you more actionable financial knowledge in one video than most people get from an entire book on the subject. Stay to the end, because I'm going to show you how these 5 options work together, not just individually. And that combination is where the real protection lives. Let's start with what's actually happening, because most people feel inflation without ever understanding the mechanism behind it. Inflation means prices rise over time. That part everyone knows. But here's what most people miss. If prices are rising and your money is sitting still in a regular savings account earning next to nothing, your money isn't just failing to grow. It's actively losing purchasing power every single day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Here's a simple way to see it. If inflation runs at 3.5% a year and your savings account pays you 0.5%, you're losing 3% of your money's real value every single year, even though the number on your bank statement never goes down. It might even go up slightly. That's what makes this trap so easy to miss. $10,000 sitting in that account for 10 years could lose roughly a quarter of its real purchasing power without you ever seeing a single dollar disappear from the balance. Think about that for a second. Your bank statement might show $10,500 after 10 years of tiny interest payments. On paper, that looks like growth. But in terms of what that money can actually buy you, groceries, gas, rent, you've quietly lost a quarter of it. Nobody sent you a notice. Nothing dramatic happened. It just slowly, silently disappeared. That's the trap. It feels safe because the number stays the same or even grows slightly. But safe and protected are not the same thing. Cash sitting still is not protection. It's slow, invisible erosion, and it's one of the most common financial mistakes I saw over and over again during my years as an advisor. People who did everything right by saving diligently, but never accounted for what inflation was doing behind the scenes. And this isn't a new problem either. Go back to the late 1970s and early 1980s, and the country lived through a stretch where inflation ran well into the double digits for several years straight. People who kept everything in cash during that period watched their purchasing power get cut dramatically in a much shorter window than the 10-year example we just walked through. It's happened before. It's happening in smaller ways right now. And at some point in some form, it will happen again. That's exactly why having a real plan matters more than just hoping it doesn't affect you. So the goal isn't to avoid risk entirely, because as you just saw, sitting in cash carries its own hidden risk. The goal is to put your money into things that move with inflation or faster than it, instead of things that quietly fall behind it. That's exactly what these next 5 options are built to do. And we're going to rank them from the easiest to start with to the most powerful once you're ready to go further. Here's the one almost nobody talks about, and it's backed directly by the US government, which means this isn't some obscure, risky product you've never heard of for a good reason. It's about as safe as investing gets, and it's specifically designed to solve exactly the problem we just described. Series 1 savings bonds, I bonds for short. These are savings bonds specifically built to adjust with inflation. The interest rate on an I bond is directly tied to the consumer price index, meaning when inflation goes up, your return goes up right alongside it. When inflation cools down, so does the rate, but you're never left behind the way that savings account we just talked about leaves you behind. You can buy these directly from the U.S. Treasury at treasurydirect.gov. No brokerage account required, no fees, no middleman taking a cut. The minimum to start is just $25. $25, directly protected against inflation, backed by the full faith of the federal government. There's one thing to understand before you start. I bonds have a required holding period. You can't touch the money for the first 12 months. And if you cash out before 5 years, you lose the last 3 months of interest. This isn't money for next month's bills. This is money you're specifically setting aside to outpace inflation over time. So plan accordingly. Now, tips. Treasury inflation-protected securities. These work a little differently, and it's worth understanding the distinction. Instead of the interest rate adjusting, the actual principal, the amount of money you originally invested, adjusts with inflation. If inflation rises, your principal grows along with it. When the bond matures, you get back your original investment, adjusted upward for every bit of inflation that happened along the way. Tips are available in longer terms, 5, 10, even 30 years, and you can buy these directly at treasurydirect.gov as well, or through any brokerage account like Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard, the same platforms you already know from earlier videos on this channel. So which one makes sense for you? Between the two, I bonds are better for shorter term, smaller scale protection with the easiest possible entry point. Tips are better if you're thinking longer term and want a bond specifically built to preserve larger amounts of purchasing power over many years, especially inside a retirement account. Either way, this is the most direct, most guaranteed form of inflation protection that exists anywhere in the financial system. And it's sitting right there, available to literally anyone for $25. Ask yourself honestly, did you know this existed before today? There is one important detail to know before you dive in headfirst. I bonds have an annual purchase limit of $10,000 per person per calendar year through Treasury Direct. That's not a small amount for most people starting out, so it's rarely a real obstacle, but it does mean I bonds work best as one part of your protection, not the entire strategy on their own. That's exactly why we're covering 4 more options today, not stopping here. Take a second and think about this honestly. If you'd known about I bonds a year ago, would $25 have felt like too small a step to bother with? It's not too small. It's a real guaranteed piece of protection, and it's one you can set up in the next 15 minutes if you wanted to, right after this video ends. Next, real estate investment trusts, or REITs. And here's why these make sense as an inflation hedge. Rent tends to rise right alongside inflation. As the cost of everything goes up, landlords raise rents to keep pace with their own rising costs. If you own real estate, even a small slice of it, that rising rent becomes rising income for you. A REIT is a company that owns income producing real estate, apartment buildings, shopping centers, warehouses, even data centers. And by law, REITs are required to pay out at least 90% of their taxable income back to shareholders as dividends. That means when you own a REIT, you're getting a real slice of real estate income without ever having to buy a property, screen a tenant, or fix a broken water heater at 2 in the morning. This is the part people don't realize. You don't need a down payment, a mortgage approval, or property management experience to benefit from real estate. You can own a piece of real estate income for the price of a single share, starting with whatever amount you're comfortable with. Getting started is exactly the same process you already know from this channel. Search the ticker on Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard, the same no minimum, no fee platforms we've walked through in past videos. REITs trade just like any other stock or ETF. No special account or extra steps required. Real estate has historically been one of the more reliable inflation hedges, specifically because the income tied to it, rent, is one of the things that rises most consistently alongside the cost of living. When everything else gets more expensive, rent usually follows close behind. And REITs let you collect that rise in income without ever picking up a hammer, answering a maintenance call, or dealing with a tenant directly. There's also a growth component here worth mentioning. As property values rise over time, which they've historically done alongside inflation, the REIT itself can appreciate in value. On top of the dividend income it's already paying you, you're not just protected, you're positioned to grow. If you've watched our video on dividend income investing, this is going to feel familiar. The same reinvestment principle applies here. Reinvest the dividends a REIT pays you, and you're not just collecting rising rental income, you're compounding it into more shares, which produce even more income over time. Same mechanism, different assets, same result. Let's put a real number on this. A $5,000 position in a REIT paying a 4% yield generates roughly $200 a year in dividend income to start. As rents rise with inflation over time, that income has historically grown right along with it, without you adding another dollar of your own money. That's rising income working in the background, specifically because you own a piece of real estate that adjusts with the cost of living, instead of a bank account that doesn't. Now, commodities. Gold, oil, agricultural products, industrial metals. These are physical, tangible goods, and historically, commodity prices tend to rise during inflationary periods, sometimes sharply, faster than almost anything else on this list. I want to be honest with you about this one, because I'm not going to oversell it the way a lot of finance content does. Commodities are more volatile than the other options we've covered today. Prices can swing hard in both directions, sometimes for reasons that have nothing to do with inflation at all. Supply disruptions, geopolitical events, even weather patterns affecting crops. This is a real hedge, and it can be powerful, but it comes with real ups and downs that the other options simply don't carry. Here's the simplest way to get exposure without the complexity most people imagine when they hear the word commodities. You don't need to buy physical gold bars, rent a safe deposit box, or open a specialized futures trading account with a broker. A broad commodity ETF handles all of that complexity for you. One ticker, purchased the exact same way you buy any other fund, on the same platforms you already use for everything else. This keeps commodities accessible without the complexity that scares most people away from them entirely. And honestly, that complexity is exactly why most people skip this category altogether, even though it can add real value. It's not something to put your whole strategy into, and I wouldn't recommend it as your primary hedge. But as one piece of a broader approach, it adds a layer of protection. The other options on this list don't fully cover, especially during sharp, sudden inflation spikes that catch everyone off guard. Gold specifically has a long history as what's sometimes called a crisis hedge. During periods of high uncertainty or rapid inflation, money has historically flowed into gold as a store of value, often pushing its price up sharply in a short window of time. That's the upside case for commodities. The honest downside case is that when things calm back down, commodity prices can fall just as quickly as they rose. This is a hedge for volatility, and it behaves in a volatile way itself. Go in with that understanding, and it becomes a useful tool instead of a source of stress. So here's the question you're probably asking right now. Which one of these should I actually pick? And the honest answer is, you're thinking about this the wrong way. This isn't about picking the single best option and putting everything into it. It's about understanding that each one protects you differently. And the real strength comes from combining them into what I call a stack. I-bonds and TIPS give you guaranteed government-backed protection. Think of this as the floor underneath everything else, the part of your strategy that can't fail you. REITs give you rising income that tends to track inflation closely over time, plus the growth potential real estate has historically provided on top of that income. Commodities give you protection specifically during the sharp, sudden inflation spikes that the other two can sometimes lag behind on. None of these are competing with each other for a spot in your portfolio. They're covering different parts of the exact same problem from different angles. That's the whole idea behind the stack. You're not betting on inflation behaving one particular way, staying slow and steady, or spiking suddenly. You're building protection that holds up no matter which direction it moves. You don't need to start with all three categories at once, and you shouldn't feel like you have to. Start with what fits your situation right now. $25 into an I-bond is a real meaningful first step, not a token gesture. Add a REIT when you're ready for rising income on top of that foundation. Layer in a small commodity position later if you want that extra layer of protection against sudden spikes. This builds over time, the exact same way everything else on this channel does. One deliberate step at a time, not everything at once. The point isn't to do all 5 things by tomorrow. The point is to know they exist, understand what each one actually does, and start with whichever one makes the most sense for where you are right now. If you want a simple way to think about proportions once you do start combining these, many people find it reasonable to let guaranteed protection like I-bonds and TIPS make up the largest share of this particular stack, since that's your floor. REITs typically come in as the next largest piece, since they carry more growth potential alongside their protection, and commodities usually make sense as the smallest slice, a supplement, not a foundation, specifically there for the sharp spikes the other two can lag behind on. This isn't a rigid formula, it's a way of thinking about balance, so no single piece is carrying more weight than it's actually built to carry. So let's bring this home. Inflation isn't going away, and it's not something any of us can control from where we sit, but how your money responds to it, That part is entirely up to you. $25 into an I-bond at treasurydirect.gov. A REIT search on a platform you already know how to use. A broad commodity ETF for extra protection when you're ready to go further. None of these require a financial advisor, a minimum balance most people don't have sitting around, or specialized knowledge you don't already have access to right now, today, after watching this. The people who feel powerless against inflation are usually the people who've never been shown these options exist in the first place. Now you have been. What you do with that is up to you. But you're no longer in the dark about it. 5 ways. 1 floor of guaranteed protection, 1 source of rising income, 1 layer for the sharp spikes nobody sees coming, and 1 simple idea holding it all together. Don't let your money sit still while everything around it moves. Whichever one you start with today, starting is the part that actually matters. If this gave you an actual plan instead of just more worry, that's exactly why this channel exists. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's been feeling their money slip away without fully understanding why. And stick around, because next time we're going somewhere I haven't taken you yet, and it's going to change the way you look at your money completely.